So now everything is working pretty well, and there's really only one more piece of functionality I want to add this week. So everything is remembering its state. So if I hit reload here, I get the same hand. And if I go back and hit reload, I get the same hand. And it tracks my balance and number of hands played. But watch what happens when I log out. So I have 5 hands played with a balance of -2. If I log out and log back in, I start from scratch. So first hand, balance -1, new hand, history is completely erased. And even worse, if I were to leave this session up and I went to school and logged into the same account, I would start from scratch there too. So it would be a completely different session with a different session ID, different cookie in my browser at school than I have here, and bad stuff happens. So sessions are great for tracking one session on one browser for one user until the session expires, but not as good if you want to permanently store information about an account and have multiple browsers access that information. Like the same person logging into their Newegg account from different computers, there's one account that's permanent and multiple sessions that access that same account. So we're actually pretty close to being able to implement that functionality. So I've actually been careful when I set this project up. I was careful to do some things that were going to make it easy to implement this part later on. And so now we're actually going to be able to implement stuff to store the state of the session in a permanent file for all users with relatively little code here. So if I can do it without messing up, I can probably do this in about 10 lines of code, give or take. So let's see what's going to happen. So every time I change the session, I want to store that information in a permanent file. So the session is going to get stored in a permanent file. And every time I check to see whether the user is logged in, I'm going to restore the session data from that permanent file. And I already have the functions that I need to read data from the file and write data to the file because it's going to use the same functions I already did for managing user information in the user's CSV file. So let's go ahead and see how this is going to work. I'm going to go to my utilities file, and up here at the top, I'm going to create a new file for account data. So this is going to be the account session data. Const account data file. And I'm going to put this in the data folder as accountdata.csv. And then I'm going to right-click on the data folder, create a new file called accountdata.csv. And then back in utilities, I'm going to have a field for account username field. So that's going to be the first column, and account session field, that's going to be the second column. So 2 columns, just like my users.csv file, and I'm going to use the same kind of functions to read and write them. So I need two functions to modify this file. I need to have a function for saving the session, and it doesn't need to take any parameters. And it's going to use this existing file function, add key value. So it's going to take a key, which is going to be the username. The record is going to be an array with the username in column 1 and the session data in column 2. And the file name is going to be that accountdata.csv. And this is going to save the session information in the file under the username. So let's get the username. And the login code stores that under $get session value of session username key. And then I'm going to call my add key value. The key is going to be username. The value is going to be an array containing username, and I want to just put $under_session like this, right? And I'm going to store that into account data file. But this isn't going to quite work because this is actually an array. It's an associative array, and it has arrays inside of it and so on. And fput_csv is not smart enough to take this and store it in a CSV file. So in order to make fput_csv work, storing this in the CSV file, I have to turn this thing into a string. And I could use something like JSON encode to do that. We saw how to take an array with JSON encode and turn that into a string. But there's actually a function that's purpose-built for that I talk about in the lecture videos this week called Serialize. And Serialize is the exact same function that PHP uses in order to store the session array into that temp file that we saw before. So if I use Serialize here, then anything that I can put in a session object that's going to work for a session is also going to work for storing that session in the CSV file. So that's kind of elegant. And that's actually all I need for saving the session. And then for restoring the session, I'm going to start the same way. Username is get session value of session username key. And then I'm going to get my session data by using lookup key value. Key is the username. And then the value is, is the file name rather, is account data file. And this will either return the previous session data for the user if they exist, or if this is a brand new first time I've done it, it's going to return null. So if it's null, I don't want to do anything to the session array at all. But if I get data coming back, I want to restore the session data from this thing here. So if not empty session data, that means I got something coming back. So I'm going to set $_session equal to, and then this is serialized, this value is serialized, so I want to unserialize it, of session data sub account session field. And that's going to restore my session data from the permanent file if it exists, which is all I need to do for restore session. So the other thing that I did when I was setting this project up is I made sure that every time I changed the session value, I went through set session value. So if I've been consistent in doing that, I only need to make one change, one call to save session in order for everything to work correctly. So here's my set session value. I'm just going to call save session here. And now anytime I change the session array, it's going to flush that change out to the file. And then I also made sure that both my main page and my draw page were using require login. So if I get here, I know the user is logged in and session username key is set. So here I'm going to call restore session, and that should be the only place that I need to call it. And that's it. That's everything I need to make permanent session data. So let's see if it works. I'm going to go ahead and hit reload. Account username field already defined, so that's not good. So I'm going to have to pick a different name here. So account username field. So I'm using the same key for this file as I'm using for this file. So let's go ahead and fix that. So let's call this session data account username field, and I'm going to call this session data account session field. It's a little long, but it's descriptive. So here's the, and I'm actually not even using this variable anywhere. I am using this variable. So let's go ahead and reload. Okay, so that worked. And let's go ahead and play a few hands so that we have some data, make sure it worked. Just do one more. Okay, so I played 3 hands. I have a balance of -1. If I go back, this hand starts with the king of clubs, ends with the queen of diamonds, 4 hands, -2 balance. So I'm going to log out, and then I'm going to log back in and keep my fingers crossed. So it starts with the king of clubs, ends with the queen of diamonds, 4 hands, balance -2. So it actually seems to have remembered my data. And then if I reload, same result. So now at this point, if I log out, it's going to put me back to the main page, which is going to give me a new hand, deal me a new hand. Hands played should show as 5, balance should show as -3, and I should get a brand new hand. So log out, test me 3, test me, log in, hands played is 5, balance is -3, and I get a brand new hand. Try one more time. So I like pair of jacks, so I'm going to log out, test me 3, test me, log in. I got the same pair of jacks. And if I log out and create a new account, test me 4, test me, register. So I have a pair of kings in this hand, this account. I'm going to log out, log back into test me 3. There's my pair of jacks. So it's actually remembering everybody's account information correctly. And if I look at this account data, here's how it gets stored. So this field here in the CSV is username, and then I have a double-quoted string, and that's all the session data that's been serialized. And I also have an account for test me 4, and there's all the data for test me 4. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this project and that you've had fun.